The long wait for Bills football will be over next weekend, but for this week, if you didn't miss anything, we do have many pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. We'll also hear from Sal Capaccio later on today at 5 o'clock, so do stay tuned for that. The Patriots reliefs safety Jabril Peppers. Peppers did play 85 games for the club and still has $4.32 million of guaranteed money remaining on his contract for this season. Over in college football, some action tonight. 2 games at 8 o'clock. Colorado hosts Georgia Tech, while Auburn, they are in Waco, Texas, to take on Baylor, also at 8 o'clock. 3 top 10 matchups this weekend. Tomorrow at noon, number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. Then at 7:30, number 4 Clemson hosts number 9 LSU. And then on Sunday night, number 6 Notre Dame is in South Florida to take on number 10 Miami. Bison's on the road versus Indianapolis just after 7. That game can be heard on our sister station, the Bet 1520. Then just after 7, the Jays host Milwaukee and the Mets host the Marlins, while at 7:40, the Yankees, they're in Chicago versus the White Sox. And Sports Talk on WGR is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550. But before we get to today's show, our own Sal Capaccio has a special message.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zach. I am out here with my buddy Matt Bove. We are getting ready for It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, a live podcast at Signals down Route 20 in Irving. And oh my goodness, everybody, we have so much going on out here. We have Paula's Donuts while supplies last, and we have autographed Buffalo football merchandise courtesy of TSE Buffalo. You can register to win a Keon Coleman signed 2021 replica helmet here. It's a Keon Coleman, I should say, signed helmet. You could register to win a Jim Kelly football, a Joey Bosa autographed football. And in fact, I'll tell you this. I was just told by Tony, who's the manager here, the first person who listens to my voice right now and pulls in and looks for and asks for Tony here at Signals is going to get one of these footballs. The first person who comes in right now here at Signals, Route 20 in Irving, and asks to see Tony, you're going to get one of these footballs right now. We have a Terrell Bernard jersey, a Taron Johnson jersey. You can sign up for free to win any of this, plus WGR merch on hand. Matt Bove. Matt, you ready to do the podcast today?
Yes, I am absolutely right. We got a gorgeous day for this. This is awesome.
It's going to be absolutely awesome. It's always game day in Buffalo. Make sure you're watching today. We'll be down here today. We'll see you. Come on down. We're here from 3 to 5 p.m. And oh, by the way, when you come down, 10 cents off a gallon of gas. How about that? Get down here right now. Signals, Route 20 in Irving. Now, go.
Thanks, Sal. Now on to the show.
My dad's not here right now. He's still at work. So I'm going to blast him.
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I'm going to see if there's a clean version so that my parents and the people at my school will not get mad at me. We've got the spritzer filled with water just in case if stuff gets too fire. I'm going to set up the speaker and I'm going to listen to
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I think this is the best
Mike Schopp
feature that I've heard in a long time. I think his flow is really good in it, and I like his aggressiveness on it, and
the Bulldog.
Put not enough effort in it. I think overall his flow was good, but I don't like that mobile rapping. That was my review of
Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Didn't need the spritzer. Wasn't fire enough. No spritzer for you. No spritzer.
Well, listen, I have 2, but they're not with me, and you can't have them. But I do have these 2 autographed Stephon Diggs footballs, collecting dust in my basement. Just, I think my son won in a raffle at a school. Pretty sure that's what happened. I feel like one is his. And here one time we had a kind of a picnic, and there was cornhole and different things, and my partner and I won, and we were able to pick from the prizes, and I'm a value-based drafter. So for me, the Diggs ball, even though we already had one in our house and really didn't care about him that much, that's what the tickets were gone. So, all right, now I've got 2 Stephon Diggs autographed footballs. If only Sal knew. I have no plans for them. You would never know who signed these balls because he's like most athletes, since when? The 90s? The 60s? That you just really have no idea what they've written. I mean, it might actually be a bit, and my daughter won a stick signed by Matthias Samuelsson, and oh my goodness, like you just have it. It could just as easily be that my dog found a marker in the middle of the night and just sort of dragged it to her bed and came across the blade of the hockey stick and just sort of dragged a black line on the stick, and like that's the autograph. That would be no worse than what it is. I mean, I know these guys sign a lot but rarely is there any effort made into actually signing their name. So that it looks like their name. Maybe you get a number. I don't know. What am I going to do with 2 autographed Stefan Diggs footballs? No, again, you can't come down here and just take them from me, even if you know Tony. There's just no chance of that. All the people who are here today working will get in your way. There'll be so much traffic in the office. It's kind of like most days, but I mean, it's a wasteland today. Nobody's here for the Friday before Labor Day. As a football fan and not much of a college fan, Labor Day and so many fantasy leagues and lineups. I'm so excited. Like every day I'm this is wasted time. I know you can tell me that all of it is, but there's a plan here to try to win money and sort of have fun doing it. Every day for the last week or more, I go to my websites and try to, see if my lineup is right. That's ridiculous. I really don't need to be doing that. One of the sites I play on, you click on live scoring. Try this if you're as excited as I am for the season. If you had your draft already, isn't that quaint? Your one draft. Go to the site you're on and click on live scoring or whatever, version of that your site that you use has. And I went to one today and it said live scoring. It was like, I was being scolded. Live scoring is not available until the season. Like, well, we're not close enough so that I can see my matchup in week 1. I guess not. But I started to say Labor Day weekend gets away from me as a fan, as a player. It just always does. Tomorrow doesn't happen this way every year, but first day of a 3-day weekend, even including tonight. I have a draft at 10 tonight, of course, but sometimes even including the Friday night, get to Saturday and it's, usually sort of the last weekend before school. It is for one of my kids' sake anyway. If it's nice out, you just get that last taste of summer. And my family life is kind of different now, but for many years, those drought years when I did with Bulldog every post-game show, and the Bills almost never played at night, and it was like there's going to be this is almost the last Sunday off before New Year's. Like this is the last Sunday off of the calendar year. And now it's different. I don't work the night games anymore, mostly. And the Bills are playing at night a lot. I mean, they've had how many night games the last 3 years? Maybe 20, something like that. So it's been different. But we used to look at it as this is sort of Daddy's last Sunday. And so Saturday might be like kick back, not thinking about work and sports, and it's off for 3 days. Then Sunday would be maybe a hike or some sort of family outing. My father often had a party on Labor Day where extended family would come in. That might be happening again. I don't even know. Just sort of the weekend would go by. And then maybe Monday I'm a little hungover and it's just like, oh, it's a Monday off. We're school shopping. We're just like, it's really a weekend, almost ironically, where I get away from football kind of pretty hard. And then Tuesday shows up and Ross Tucker is on hold. And I've got, there's a game on Thursday and I've got 50 lineups and so I not in a bad way because the family stuff I say is important, but in a football way, I'll get to Tuesday afternoon and just be like, wow, did I miss anything? There probably won't be very much news, I guess, but there could be some. So that's just me. Today, Sam Panayotovich, Matt Waldman, and Sal Capaccio later on. I kind of want to do picks, but there's only college games, and I did watch some of Sam's show, Bet Sweats, today, and found out that Baylor was playing tonight against Auburn. And my wife went to Baylor, and she knew that. She knew that before I did. She's like, yeah, they haven't hosted an SEC team in X number of years. I'm like, great. So that'll maybe be on in my house tonight. I think that's 8 o'clock. The spread is like less than a field goal. Auburn at Baylor. That'll look good. Baylor has 50 different uniform combinations, so you never know what you're going to get there. And so that's exciting. I was pretty geared up watching Bet Sweats. They're talking about, the college slate, but also NFL futures and that. And Bulldog is not here, but he's big on this, and with Sam even, 8 division winner parlay. And he and I had a fun couple of days, Bulldog and I, over the offseason, like sort of tried to put that together. And there was one day where, why is it going to pay me less if I pick Detroit instead of Minnesota in the NFC North, even though Minnesota is the bigger underdog? I still haven't dug in, and I like this about myself. I still haven't dug in hard enough on these to really analyze that. But I did today come up with a bet that I made, 8 division winners. And, come on. What are your chances, right? But $10, I'm in. I did it for you. I did it to give you something to listen to because I know you were dying for this. So here's what I did. I'll go AFC, then NFC, east to west. I could have moved off of the first 2 picks if I wasn't happy with what the return would be if I were to win. But I got to 8, I got through it, and I was fine with the return, so I left it. Bills, Ravens, chalk. The Bills are the biggest division favorite in the league. I've had kind of this, really just for the sake of our conversation mostly, this kind of attitude with many guests over the offseason, like, what do you think about the division? Is it as cake as most people seem to think? And most of our guests have said yes. Even, yesterday it was like, I don't really see Steve Palazzolo on Wednesday. I don't really see anybody challenging for first place, but this or that could happen. So I left the Bills on, and I left the Ravens on too. I don't think the Ravens especially really have to win that division. There's just more to believe in beyond Baltimore there, that if Cincinnati's defense holds up and you get the same year from Burrow and company, maybe you get a 12-win Bengals season. They lost the 2 games to Baltimore last year by a nose. And they win those games. They almost would have flipped last year with one of the worst defenses in the league and everybody loving everything about Baltimore. So they weren't really that far away. And you have Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, and that's to be respected, I guess. So it doesn't have to happen. Might do another one where I leave the Ravens off. I started Bills, Ravens. Now I know when I get to the AFC South, I've got to get creative. Just picking all the favorites is not going to work. So I went Jacksonville there. And I don't think that's really that risky. Houston, though, very questionable up front, new coordinator. If you need it, if you care about it, Mixon is out, and he might not play at all. Rookie receivers after Collins and Christian Kirk, I guess. Houston is not that solid to me. So Jacksonville, new coach, lots of talent. We'll try that. And then I went with Denver. And Denver, as we get to the end of the offseason, to me, is a team that everybody respects. Maybe they don't think they're great, but everybody thinks they're good. Great defense, maybe. We'll see if that repeats. It often doesn't when it comes to defense, but everybody loves their roster defensively. Knicks worked out. I just sort of, to be cheeky, better stats than Allen last year. Yards, touchdowns, picks. Like, Nix was better than the MVP in every one of those categories as a rookie. So you got something there. And they use a lot of different pieces, like the Bills do, kind of, at receiver and even running back. But Sean Payton was a success last year there. And then maybe they're better, and maybe Kansas City just has, I don't know, it's lame. Run its course. I mean, does Rashee Rice's suspension, it feels like nothing can really penetrate them, but you just don't win forever. So Denver's live. I think they're good. A couple of swing games, and maybe you get there for first place. Then NFC, I went Philadelphia because I didn't have a better idea. I just don't really trust Washington to be the same team. Just a spike year like that. And there might be a little bit with the Eagles of, nobody repeats in that division. No way they have sort of the smooth trip, like in a horse race, they might say, as last year. So they have to throw more. Not everybody loves Hurts as a passer. I think there could be a sort of skepticism about the Eagles that I'm just going to bet against here and take them. And it wasn't like a huge price. Can't get with Dallas anymore. And I think the Giants might be okay, but I doubt first place. I mean, that'd be pretty crazy. So Philadelphia, and then I liked this idea partly because of yesterday. Minnesota. I think Detroit is okay here too. Just kind of playing off the idea that maybe we're all going to overreact to Green Bay. The trade is incredible. I hope that, Matt LaFleur, most people, I don't say different really, most people I think consider him really good. They've won a lot, but they haven't won big. And he had the MVP quarterback for a couple seasons, and they paid Jordan Love huge. They haven't really gotten there yet. And I wonder if, I said this, even yesterday, before the Parsons trade, is Green Bay ready to sort of put its foot down, like ready to go for it? They run the ball a lot. They don't run very many plays relative to the rest of the league. It's all pretty safe. Do you believe in Jordan Love or don't you? Wide receiver in the first round. Now this trade, Green Bay had better come out going. Next week, they open with the Lions at home. Perfect. Make your statement. Do we need more time to acclimate Micah Parsons? I would hope not. They have a Jaden Reed injury that might be a little bit of annoying for them, but I just, in terms of this particular parlay, though, I went with Minnesota because I think the roster is great. And, O'Connell, the coach, has gotten his quarterbacks off every time. And Justin Jefferson, the same every time. They bring in Adam Thielen to put with Jefferson and Hawkinson to start the season. They get Jordan Addison after 3 games. Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason. I like the Vikings. So they were the third choice. Gave me a little bit of juice here for this parlay. Then I'm going to skip the NFC South for dramatic effect. San Francisco is the favorite in the West. A super easy schedule. It was interesting to talk to Steve Palazzolo about that division on Wednesday. At the end of our conversation, which I really enjoyed, I asked him, is there a dark horse for you in the league this year? And his answer was, I think anything can happen in the NFC West. Maybe Seattle with Darnold. If they get the offensive line right, maybe they're legit. Arizona. I can't just bring myself to consider Arizona as good. It's happened. Kurt Warner, Carson Palmer, even Murray got them to the playoffs. It's happened. I liked his argument, his logic. Okay, maybe. The Rams, they have a recent Super Bowl. They still have Stafford, Nakua, Devontae Adams, McVay. They've got the principal, Jared Verse. They've got the principal figures for a team that you can, believe in. And they went to the NFC or divisional round. They lost to Philadelphia in a close game, but they held up pretty well last year. I'm just going with the Niners. They've got enough right. They always scheme their offense to pretty much perfection. McCaffrey is healthy. Kittle, So I went San Francisco. And then NFC South, I went Carolina. This was the one bigger long shot that I picked. Second biggest would be who? Like the Vikings, I guess. And they're not really that much of a long shot. They won, 13 games last year or something. But Carolina's a big bet. Carolina is a coach that really incredibly, the player deserves the credit too, incredibly salvaged Bryce Young last year. That was just, he was written off like total bust at the 101. Stroud was a great rookie, and Young was just like terrible. Next year starts, so last year, it's more of the same. He sits for a month or so, comes back, and he's got it. Really weird. I don't know how that happened. We don't ever talk to anybody from Carolina. Like, what actually happened there? But here comes Bryce Young, and now Teteroa McMillan, I almost said McMillions because I heard him described that way, 8th overall. They trade Thielen to Minnesota. Okay. Jalen Coker, if you've got a fantasy draft this weekend, just remember that name. You might not be in a league where you need to pick him, but he's probably their number 2. I think he's probably above Leggett, who was their first-round pick last year after trading with the Bills. And the Bills and Panthers swap spots. The Panthers draft Xavier Leggett. The Bills wait until the next night and draft Keon Coleman. So I think it sounds like Coker is the number 2 behind McMillan, a rookie. And then you have another young player at tight end, Jatavian Sanders. Chuba Hubbard was fine. They've got some interesting pieces. I don't really know what they are defensively, but I don't think Tampa Bay has to win the NFC South every year. And Atlanta was a little bit too obvious as a pivot in this kind of a thing. So we went Bills, Ravens, Jaguars, Broncos in the AFC, division winners, Eagles, Vikings, Panthers, 49ers. And $10 on that, I'm already counting the money. Almost definitely will lose. Wins 4,100, so 4,100 on a $10 bet. And I'd like to think never will there be a day where like, I wish I had that $10. It must be nice, right? But I'd like to think I will not ever regret this. It's a small enough amount. It's less than lunch, where I can live with whatever happens. And, if you get to a point in the season with these, and Sam's the expert who will be on next, not me, but I think if you get to a point in the season where 6 or 7 of them look good, then you can hedge on the others, just figure out however you have to do that, whether that's a division bet or games or anything like that. So that's what we did. I wanted to be involved. Bulldog did his. He's not here. I want mine. Buffalo, Baltimore, Jacksonville, Denver, Philadelphia, Minnesota, Carolina, and San Francisco. Okay. Well, there's a lot. Even though we've got the holiday weekend coming up and the regular season doesn't start until next week, and I've also got 3 guests coming up, whether it's fantasy or whether it's any sort of Bills point that we've been talking about for a couple of days or for 6 months. This is the day for it. We get to Tuesday, and we're breaking down matchups. I think Tuesday, especially with Monday off, like I said, Labor Day weekend just sort of truncates the whole thing. We get to Tuesday, and it's like, okay, wow, the Ravens, this is really happening. Final opener out at the stadium, all of it is just right around the corner here. Sam Panayotovich from Bet Sweats. We'll talk a little bit about the college football weekend, some of these future thoughts, and maybe a little fantasy too. I'll tell them about my 2 individual awards bets that I made, being able to do so having been on the road last weekend in a state where they allow you to do that. Crazy that there's a place with such freedom where you can actually bet on who will win the MVP. But New York is not such a place, so you got to travel for that. I don't think Philadelphia. I don't think Pennsylvania is either. I don't think Ohio is either, but I know Indiana is. Indiana will let you make such a bet. Sam next, Matt Waldman, Sal Capaccio as well to come today. Thanks for being with me. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
Matt Bove, co-host of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. Matt, we are ready to rock and roll down here at Signals in Irving. 10 cents off a gallon of gas, Paula's Donuts. We got prizes here. We got Buffalo autographed football merchandise. It's awesome.
Yeah, and we've already had a bunch of people pull over and stop, say hello, get a couple donuts, put their names in for some of these drawings. We got a great turnout. This is awesome.
It's going to be awesome until 5 p.m. and beyond, but that's how long we're here. We're going to be here till 5 p.m. And while we are here today, you get 10 cents off a gallon. Also, you can register to win so many great Buffalo football autographed merchandise items from our friends at TSE Buffalo Total Sports Enterprises. Go to billsbids.com. You can see everything that's here. We got Terrell Bernard autographed jersey. We got Jim Kelly autographed football. We got a Joey Bosa autographed football. Keon Coleman autographed helmet. Lots of different stuff that you can register to win right now. And once again, Paula's Donuts is on hand. 10 cents off a gallon. Matt and I are here, and we are about to do an Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast. So make sure you're tuned in as well. We'll see you down here at Signals Gas Station, Route 20 in Irving. We are here until 5 p.m.
Today. Why, it's the Championship League, if I'm saying it right. It's not the Champions League where like it's Paris Saint-Germain against Real Madrid or Outer Milan, if you know, you know. No, it's like the second division. The teams that are not quite good enough for the Premier League are playing Leicester City, which has been in the Premier League, before. They've won it. 17 maybe, incredible story. And Birmingham. And I think I want to talk about this later maybe. I love the idea of the second division. We've made the point over the years, like with the Sabres. And what if they got relegated? How would you feel the next year if then you had to sort of get to know the American Hockey League and the Sabres had to finish, top 4 or something to get back to the NHL, and they had to beat one of those Western teams, Orange County or whatever it was, to get back to the NHL? It'd be pretty wild. Some people would just ignore it. I think I would probably get into it. Maybe it'd be more interesting. Relegation is always great. Joining me now on the West Her Hotline, the host of Bet Sweats on the BetMGM network, Sam Panayotovich. Sam, look at you now. You wake up one morning and Sam's on FS1 after a college game, and then he's on Dan Patrick. You know what I do to step up your show?
You know what I'm doing right now in my glamorous life, Mike?
I couldn't imagine. No.
I'm filling out expense reports, which are the bane of my existence. It's my least favorite thing to do on planet Earth. I'm sitting here. I can do a lot of things quickly. It takes me 45 minutes to do one expense report. I'm ready to launch this computer out the window.
At least it means you're going places.
I guess. I'm taking trains to New York on Wednesday and coming back on Thursday. It's not exactly glamorous.
Okay. It's something. It's something that you're keeping track of so you can get reimbursed by the company. That's good. Well, what a great time of year. And, what else do I want to know about your, burgeoning career here? You were on after maybe Nebraska or Minnesota last night? Minnesota UB? What was the deal?
So we do bear bets with Chris Felica. It's Felica, Jeff Schwartz, who played in the NFL, and myself. And the show has been mostly podcasted for the last few years. They have decided, the digital side has decided, let's package the podcast on video and audio. So now we're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and then they've been able to sort of crank it where they can get it on TV format. So they splice up that 40-minute show we do and package it for TV now, which I didn't even know until last week. They didn't even tell us.
Oh.
So I was sitting at home and I was getting a bunch of texts about, hey, you're on TV. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm having a bourbon on my couch. And then I flipped the channel on and we were on. So it's cool. It's an exciting time. I love my weeks, and I always have time for Schopp and the Bulldog. I will say, though, everybody likes me until I give a bad weekend. Then everybody hates me. So it's a very polarizing time for me.
Yes, I'm sure that's right. Yeah, similar here. One day they came in and said, we're putting cameras in your studio. I'm like, oh, well, that'll be interesting. Let me, talk to my people and see how that's going to change how things go for me here. No. You misheard me. We're putting cameras in your studio. So the same kind of thing happened here. They just tell you how it's going to work. Micah Parsons, Sam. So I caught some of your show today, and I was on the air yesterday when it happened, and I went, maybe it was half an hour after it happened, I went to look at what kind of effect the trade had on the markets, because I figured this would be one. I mean, this is one of those rare non-quarterback developments where I think people would act, in terms of spreads and futures bets. I don't know what Green Bay was before the trade, but when I looked, they were the favorite in the NFC North. What were they before?
They were about 3-1, give or take. Some books had 280, some books had 325. They were consensusly priced about 3-1 to win the North. And the first thing I do at least, when a big move happens, you watch the overreaction. And think about this. If you're a sportsbook director and the news hits the ticker, well, actually it hits Twitter first now, then it hits the ticker on TV maybe 5-10 minutes later. But Twitter and X, so immediate. So that comes out, Adam Schefter puts the tweet out, and then people just log into their app and bet the Packers. So if you're in a sports book and you're, say you're eating lunch and then all of a sudden you just get bombarded with Packers bets, you flip out of your chair and you shut the market off because something's up. And if you're not aware, you have to get up to speed. So the first book was actually BetMGM. They went from 3-1 to plus 170. Green Bay's now favored to win the North. And then every other book sort of got to the same number. One book has it even lower in Vegas, like plus 150, plus 155. But Micah Parsons has single-handedly made the Green Bay Packers the favorite to win the division and the co-second favorite to win the NFC. Seems a little much, doesn't it? So, line one is Philly. Okay, I'm there. And then line two has Detroit and Green Bay. Does that even sound right when I say that out loud?
I guess so. I mean, I think the game is determining whether it's a reaction or an overreaction. And I can appreciate how you're laying it out, that right away The slappies, let me put it that way, Sam. In thinking back to my fantasy life here, the slappies are just going to run to the window and bet the Packers. But you're saying maybe it's not necessarily right to do that? I mean, isn't the point here to get good value?
That's the debate. If they win the division, you still have a good bet, but I don't think you have a great number. But that's sort of the bugaboo. That's the internal debate we have with ourselves. How much value are we willing to walk out the door and still be okay to bet it? You know, like it kind of changes. It's a moving target because this time last year, I remember being on this show and we were talking about Travis Hunter to win the Heisman, and he was 50-1 in the summer. He was 30-1 by week 1. And then throughout the season, he just kept getting knocked down, 20-1, 12-1, 8-1. And I remember telling you guys I would still bet this at 8-1. Then he goes down to 4-1, 250, and then he's minus money at the end of the season. You know, it's all relative. I'm not betting Green Bay personally, I'll tell you that. I think it's different in a Heisman market when you can still get, like Jaden Daniels 2 years ago was 30-1, then he was 25, then he was 18. And if you got a bad number, and I'm using air quotes around bad number, you still got a good number. You still got 18-1, and then he ends up winning the Heisman. Not betting the Packers, though. Is it weird that I just want to load up on Dak Prescott's stats now? Like, I'm looking at this in such a different way. I know the Cowboys are worse, but that means they're going to throw the ball more. And you look at his passing prop, it's moved a little bit, but not much. It's 38.75 at BetMGM. FanDuel has 39.50. Obviously, go over the little number. 38.75 is nothing in the NFL. And if he stays on the field, we know what Dak can do. I think he could throw the ball like 600 times this year, Mike.
Yeah.
And you have some of his stats. Here are some of his stats. His best years in the NFL, 49.02, 45-16, 44-49. This is a low number. If he stays healthy, all he needs is 3,876 yards. You have CeeDee Lamb, you have George Pickens. You probably aren't going to run the ball, and you're going to be losing in a lot of games.
He'd have that.
I'm not even looking at Green Bay. I'm looking at Prescott.
He'd have that number every year if he didn't get hurt. Those other 2 years, like every year for the last 7, he would be able to clear that bar. I guess I feel like my MVP bet on him is probably dead, though.
They're the Bengals of last year. He's going to have huge numbers, but they're not going to win enough games.
Right. They need to win 12 games, win the division to have a chance.
Good luck. Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, I liked this idea I think we've talked about it too, even though you and I haven't been here together in like a month. But the idea of going over on Prescott, I liked it already. In fantasy, Sam, everybody loves him. The addition of Pickens. Pickens is shooting up fantasy boards too, which is interesting, even without the trade yesterday. But wide receiver 2 in Dallas. People like Ferguson. Lamb's a top 5 pick every time, pretty much. So I think most fantasy players are already into this, and this just only helps the trade.
Which is funny because my wife, I told the story on the show this week. My wife was doing a fantasy draft.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know about Dak. The Cowboys stink. I'm like, that's the point. They're supposed to stink, and they're going to pass more. That's how you got to think about it. And she goes, oh, I see what you're saying. There we go, babe. Get here. Get here.
This is why Chase, well, it's not really why. It's part of why Chase always goes one-on-one. Because people think the Bengals defense is bad, and as good as he is, he has that, so-called advantage to it. So Chase Higgins Burrow stacks are pretty easy and definitely prevalent. I didn't see the line move for Thursday night, though.
Yeah, it's about 7.5 at a couple places. So it did blow through the 7, which is the most key number in the NFL. I would argue 3 and 7 are equally as important. Some bookies would tell you 7's more important. I don't know because games in overtime can land 6. So I think 3 is a smidge more important. But anyways, 3 and 7 are very important. It's now through 7. It was mostly 6.5, 7 before the trade, and now we've gone through that 7. The total moved up an eyelash, 46.5 to 47. Some books have 47.5, but not much movement on the total. That's a huge move, though, to go from 6.5 to 7.5 because 7's a very important number.
Mm-hmm. Sam Panayotovich, Bet Sweats on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off today. He and I get rolling together again on Tuesday after Labor Day. So you already know this because I've told you, but I went to Louisville for the weekend. The casino where we drafted was actually in Indiana, right across the state line. And there it was, just popped right up on my app, awards bets. So I did, on my way home, remembering that I was on borrowed time, being almost back into Kentucky, pull over, Sam, and you've probably done things like this in your life, pull over and made the Prescott bet because I just remembered to do it before I crossed. And while I was there, I made the George Kittle bet that you and I talked about, Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, it's nuts. I was in a conversation with 4 or 5 guys explaining to them the bull case for Kittle and how, at plus 1,500 or 15,000 it was, whatever it was, like why I did it. And I just got blank stares. He might end up getting more of target share in San Francisco with Debo gone and Ayuk hurt, and their schedule's real easy. And they're looking at me like they're thinking a tight end is going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Like, well, that's why the odds are the odds, but I did it.
He would be the first. I can confirm he'd be the first tight end.
Yes.
I don't hate a bet though. As I say that, I do remember scolding you because you bet 150 to 1 and there was like a 250 to 1 in the market. At that point, though, I guess it's not that big of a deal.
No.
Although it is. Wink, wink.
It will be.
It has turned into a non-quarterback award. So basically, what the league has turned into the last 6 years or so, the quarterbacks win the MVP, and then it's the position guys that win the offensive player. So let's go back to 2019. Michael Thomas. Then Derrick Henry, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. So it's been your most dominant, what would you call them, flex guys in fantasy?
Skill positions.
Yeah, sure, skill position guys. So the quarterbacks are now the MVP guys, and you know the list there. It's Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Jackson, Jaden Daniels on line 5, believe it or not. We're there, apparently. Seems like a lot. I mean, to have Jordan Love at 20 and Jaden Daniels at 9 seems a little off. The math ain't mathing there, but that's the hype on this kid in Washington, man.
Do you have a favorite or a couple of favorite individual awards bets of your own for this year?
Yeah, I was betting so much Jonathan Grenard, Defensive Player of the Year in Vegas, it made my head spin. I went into my coat pocket the other day, and I was looking for a chapstick, and I pulled out a $100 ticket on Grenard to win DPOY to win $10,000. I'm like, oh, great, another one. I was just picking them off, man. I think I have like 5 of them floating around this house somewhere. So that's probably not going to win, understandably so. You're betting a thing at 100 to 1. It's probably not going to win, but I do think that's a top 3 defense this year, and Flores is going to blitz and blitz and blitz. They added Jonathan Allen. They added Hargrave up front. So I think their linebackers, Van Ginkel and Grenard, are going to have big years. But in terms of realistic bets that I actually believe can win, I bet Omari and Hampton, which we talked about 3 months ago. I mean, this is before Najee Harris blew off fireworks in his face. Now Hampton's like 7 or 8 to 1. We bet 15 to 1. And then OPOI, I'm all in on McCaffrey. Anything north of 20, I keep buying up. People keep telling me, they don't have receivers. I'm like, they have Christian McCaffrey. Come on, give me a break. Yeah. So you're on Kittle, I'm on McCaffrey. Those guys are going to get fed like crazy this year. And that's what Kyle Shanahan does. He gets the ball to his best players. I'm hearing McCaffrey looks as good as he's been. So that might be a little hyperbolic, but remember, he did win this award 2 years ago.
Over Tyreek Hill, who was almost at 2,000 yards. Wasn't that the same year? Or maybe that was the year before, but still.
He was unbelievable. And then, he always gets hurt. No, he doesn't. Don't be lazy. And then when you have people that say that, like I was actually on with Dan. You mentioned DP. And he's like, well, McCaffrey's always hurt. I'm like, Dan, he won this 2 years ago. And he said, yeah, well, he got hurt last year. And I said, yes. That's baked into the price because Christian McCaffrey last summer was 6 to 1. Now he's 22 to 1, 25 to 1 because everybody is saying, oh, well, he always gets hurt. And that's all part of it. So I found myself on 3 players in markets: Grenard, defensive player, long shot; Omari and Hampton, offensive rookie; and Christian McCaffrey, offensive player of the year.
Don't you love the injury people? Like, don't you just want to have them? Don't you want to just build a sports book and have them play at it? The injury people, it's like you can't. There's no talking to them. There's no amount of evidence that will just sort of convince you, don't worry about this. And yes, he can get hurt. So could Genty. Like, just don't worry about it. You just want to be able to play against those people somehow. It's hard to pull that off, but it'd be great to be able to do it.
You're right. I wish I could just one up with them all season. But here's the truth. I'm not betting players. I'm betting numbers. I would never bet Christian McCaffrey. Like last summer, the reason I bet Saquon Barkley, because Saquon Barkley was 25-1. Saquon Barkley is now 5-1 to win the same award. And I got a text yesterday. Hey, we like Barkley again? No, we don't. We're not betting 5-1. We want to bet 20-1 or higher. So you basically, in all these award markets, the perception, the love, the hype, it's all on the guys at the top. Anybody can take the guy on top. That's easy. Anybody can bet Joe Burrow MVP or Saquon Barkley offensive player. What I'm looking to do is buy the dip perceptionally on guys like McCaffrey, who was, again, 6-1 last summer, and now he's 25-1. I wasn't betting 6, but I'll bet 22, 25.
Totally. Just a couple of minutes left with Sam Panayotovich. My alma mater-in-law tonight, Baylor against Auburn. My wife's excited. She knew about this game before I did, which, if you knew us, would maybe find that a little bit unusual, but I'm not always that up on college. Who do you like there, and who do you like in Texas, Ohio State?
I did not make a bet on Baylor. I know some guys, though, that bet Baylor +3. That number is now Baylor +1. Wink, wink. So those guys got a good number. I have nothing on the game, but I do know some guys that did take +3 on Baylor. I find myself on the over in the Ohio State-Texas game. There's a 46.5 now, DraftKings and FanDuel. This number in the summer was 50.5. So it's moved 4 points, and it's gotten through that big key number of 47. Look, I know Zach's producing your show. I'm sure Zach is terrified about the Texas secondary against Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, 2 NFL receivers. But also, Texas should move the ball, too. And Arch is going to run tomorrow. I think we're going to see a lot of big gains from Arch. Texas faces an Ohio State defense that lost 8 starters off its national championship team. And, oh, by the way, their defensive coordinator left Ohio State to go to Penn State. So I understand these are young quarterbacks and maybe inexperienced offensive lines, but there's NFL talent all over the field on offense, and I actually think these defenses are overrated. I'm over 46.5 Ohio State, Texas.
Who would leave Ohio State for Penn State?
Jimmy Knowles. Jimmy Knowles would.
I say this as the son of an Ohioan, but who would leave Ohio State for Penn State? Wow, I mean, obviously somebody doesn't watch sports. One of my many fantasy teams, sort of bragging yesterday, Sam and Joe were asking me about fantasy, how many leagues is it? And I said the thing, and Joe referred to it later when you guys were talking about this, how, no, most of them are best ball, you don't have to do anything, fine. But right after I said that, so why it's sort of easy is the slow drafts you enter are 8-hour clocks. And all I have to do is 2 or 3 times a day, like just sort of check in, make a few picks, and then move on. But yesterday they moved those to 1-hour clocks because the season is next week. And Sam, I mean, like, it's life on the wire now. Last night I was drafting, and every time I looked at my phone, I was on the clock in 4 more, and it's like 20 minutes left. So I was a little too cocky there because right now it's the pressure cooker.
I envision you. I don't know if there's any Spider-Man fans listening right now. I picture you're just like Doc Octopus with like 8 different arms, playing all these different phones, drafting all these different teams. I can't even imagine what you look like in the war room with all these things going on at once.
It's not pretty. You have your fingerprints on one of my teams, Rumhams. Just randomly,
I love Rumhams.
Randomly naming teams, and the time we talked to you about Rumham, we decided to, name a team that. And Sam, I like it. This is a team I just bought and then worked on. I'll have to decide Knicks or Fields next week. That'll be, that's probably projections-wise pretty close. Genty, Jalen Warren, Flowers, Olave, Debo, Myers, Pearsall. Then 2 of the fun rookies, Krosky Merritt, Bashal Tootin. I'm rooting for us.
I don't know who half those guys are. Can I give you my first 4 picks in my one draft?
Yes.
Can I give you my first 4?
Yes, of course.
So this is a 12-player league. I had the 6th pick, snake draft. I went McCaffrey, Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin, Joe Burrow.
You started great. I feel like it's early on McLaurin and Burrow, but, Nico at 207 is great. That's really good. McCaffrey, you're bold enough to do it. No problem there. And McLaurin, who knows? I mean, maybe you'll put down the same year as last year, and you'll be loving it.
I had to go Burrow, though, because they started taking – Hurts went off the board. Allen went off the board. I laughed. Mahomes went in the 3rd round. I love that. But I want to get my guy. I wanted Burrow because I had Burrow last year, and I did really well. So I'm bullish to a fault. I know what you guys say. You can't take a quarterback early. If it wasn't going to be Burrow, though, I wouldn't have taken a quarterback until like the 10th round.
No, that could have been good too. But you know your stuff. You do know who these players are too. Don't even try me on that. You don't know who Chris Olave is. All right.
I know Olave. You started saying Tootin or Putin or whatever you were saying. I have no idea.
That's fair. All right, Sam. Thanks for today. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend, and we'll talk next week.
I have to give you a best bet. I gave Bulldog Kansas last week. That one won. I love Miami on Sunday night, plus 2.5 against the Irish.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Are they at home?
South Beach, baby. Get ready.
All right. Miami it is. Thanks, Sam.
See you.
Sam Panayotovich, Bet Sweats, weekday mornings 9 to noon on the BetMGM network. They do 10 to 11 live on Twitter now, and you can also always find their show like I do on YouTube. Next, Matt Waldman. Mike Schopp here, WGR.
Long wait for Bills football is almost over with. Bills will be back in action next Sunday night. If you missed anything, though, from this week, we do have pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. We'll also hear from Sal later on today in just about an hour at 5 p.m. Patriots release safety Jabril Peppers. Peppers did play 85 games for the organization, still has $4.32 million of guaranteed money remaining on his contract for this year. This weekend, though, is the college football weekend. Week 1 in earnest started last night. Tonight, more games, 2 of them at 8 o'clock. Colorado hosting Georgia Tech, and then Auburn is in Waco versus Baylor. And then this weekend, 3 top 10 matchups at noon tomorrow. Number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. At 7:30 on Saturday, number 4 Clemson hosts number 9 LSU. And then on Sunday, number 6 Notre Dame is in South Florida to take on number 10 Miami. Bison's in action tonight on the road versus Indianapolis. That game just after 7 o'clock. Game can be heard over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. Just after 7 o'clock, then, the Jays host Milwaukee, while the Mets host the Marlins. Then at 7:40, the Yankees. They're in Chicago versus the White Sox. And then in the U.S. Open, Jessica Pegula, just a little while ago, advanced to the round of 16. Her next match will be on Sunday. The opponent is to be determined. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp.
Hey, put a little. I never get this line out the first time. It's not even good. Hey, put a little bit more in there, cowboy.
And the Bulldog.
What's your degree in?
Kicking ass and taking names. On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Happy Labor Day weekend, or almost. Mike Schopp here. Bulldog is off today. It is always a treat to welcome Matt Waldman to the show, footballguys.com, the rookie scouting portfolio. Matt happens to have at least one of his fantasy teams named one of my favorite names of all the people I play against, the RSP Murder. And there's that crow, Matt, right there on your Twitter bio. What's the fascination? What's the origin story on the crows?
Oh, that's a long story, but the short one I'll just say is that crows are kind of like the scouts in nature. You know, they recognize faces. They kind of inform on their on the rest of their murder. I guess what they call a pack of crows, and let them know that like who's dangerous and who's not. They're problem solvers. And we often talk about, you know, them from a humble standpoint of like when you screw up, you eat crow.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of that has a lot to do with what I do for a living. So
very good. Just the mere term murder is evocative enough, right? The image of a crow and then the murder word there, like you're already starting at a great, an advantage there.
You know, like you said, what's my degree? You know, you had that intro with what's the degree in kicking ass and taking names. I'm trying to earn my PhD in fantasy in that regard.
Well, Matt is one of the finest analysts, combining both expert film study with his fantasy acumen. Let's just start, if I may, Matt, with from you an overview of the Bills' offseason. If you want to limit it to offense, that's fine. There's really very little different personnel-wise about their offense, but okay, they scored 30 points a game. They ran for 30 touchdowns and threw for 30 touchdowns. 30 is the operative number, I guess. What's sort of your expectations for them?
Yeah, I think more of the same. Let's just get a little bit more refined. I mean, I think they're looking at this as a multi-year process. I think with Joe Brady's system, they wanted Josh Allen to spread the wealth and not be linked to just one guy and get a little bit too all in on one primary option. So they gave him a golf bag full of different clubs. You got Keon Coleman, what he can do after the catch and at the catch point downfield at the boundary, and what he can do in the middle of the field as a runner. You've got Shakir and what he does after the catch. And while he can do some of what Coleman does, he's not as physical, obviously, so they don't want to put him in those scenarios, but let him get yards after the catch and run and be able to create. And then, looking at guys like Palmer, Palmer's a little bit a tweener. He can do a little bit of both if you needed him to be that. So I think they created a little bit more redundancy in their receiver room. And then along with, Knox and Kincaid, you've got guys who can do a little bit after the catch and give you some up the seam. And they want to create good spacing to allow Josh Allen to make good decisions and limit interceptions, and he's done that very well. And with James Cook, I think the priority was let's be patient and figure out how we can get this contract right. We knew that it was going to take us a little bit of time. We hoped maybe we could get it done in the spring. Didn't quite work out that way, but don't worry, folks, it's going to happen, and it did. So now it's more about letting Coleman maybe be able to blossom fully into becoming the player that they envisioned when they drafted him, and seeing if he's a little bit more comfortable, and getting Joshua Palmer probably into the mix and Elijah Moore possibly into the mix off the bench when they need him. But just really do what they did in Brady's offense in year 2 with a little more sophistication, being able to be better at identifying disguises and coverage and being able to foil them and to create things where they have mismatches against defenses in ways that maybe they couldn't do that quite as fast as we hear all the time when, the talking heads talk about, Caleb Williams is going to need multiple years to master his offense in Detroit. In Chicago. Well, Jared Goff needed multiple years, but his first year he threw for 4,000 yards. Or for 4,400 yards. So, again, it takes multiple years to learn the offense the way they want the players to, but you can see what Josh Allen did in year 1. So, they're just going to build on it.
It can take multiple years, but I guess if you're Jared Goff or Caleb Williams and we're the first overall pick, you'll get multiple years, right? You'll get at least 2. Williams will get at least this year.
Yeah, for sure. And but it's funny because you got the back. I call it the backup quarterback fraternity. They're skilled guys, but they're kind of like folks at the post office. They're used to doing things one way. And they're also there to get clicks. So when they start talking about he's going to need years to overcome a decade of bad habits, or he's going to need, years and multiple years to master an offense. Well, yeah, most quarterbacks do. But if it creates a little bit more buzz in the media to get your attention from whatever you're eating in that sports bar, above the den of TVs, that's what's going to happen. So, Allen is already good. We already know what he's done. Joe Brady's offense, people were probably worried that losing Stephon Diggs and what that was going to do, but it looks like, the way that's worked out, the spread and the wealth thing has worked for the Bills, and they're going to try and build on it.
With Matt Waldman, specific to Coleman, may I ask you just to elaborate on what it is you think maybe he needs to work on the most? Like, how do the Bills and Coleman get to a happy place, which is, of course, what they want? He's the first pick of the second round last year. They're trying to win a championship. And for all the different analysts we've talked to all summer, Matt, Coleman is easily the number one answer for, all right, well, who on the Bills offense, if anyone, do you expect to pop? And I get Coleman way more than Kincaid, for one. So how much potential do you see for that to happen, whatever that, how you'd want to define that? And what will it have to take?
I don't think anyone's going to pop in this offense at the level that people expect. I don't think you're going to see a 1,000-yard receiver on this offense. And I think that's, for people who are hoping that Coleman becomes that, I don't think the design is going to encourage that. Because really what Coleman does so well is what we've talked about in the past at pre-draft, which is being able to win contested targets. But if you're in an offense where they're trying to diminish the amount of contested targets you actually throw, then you're not really leaning too hard on a player's athletic ability. Because, if you ask me, I look at there are 3 players in this receiving core who, if they played in another system, would probably be getting a lot more fanfare around the country if they were able to earn some of those contested shots. And that would be Coleman. It would be Khalil Shakir, because we've seen it in isolated instances when before the Joe Brady offense, where when he was just starting to get playing time, that they'd throw him open and he would make some tough plays, like that Pittsburgh play in the playoffs against Pittsburgh, where they threw it over the middle and he made a beautiful catch. He used to do that all the time in college. And then Dalton Kincaid, where I think that he honestly, for the Bills' sake, you would like to see him continue to be used the way he's being used. But in that, if you're going to say, if there's a player who's a little bit in jail, and you'd like to say free that guy's game up, it would be Dalton Kincaid. Like, as a guy who lives down here in Atlanta, if Kyle Pitts doesn't work out, I would love for Atlanta to bust him out of Buffalo and let Michael Penix, who is great at throwing people open, have Kincaid, who he can deliver balls like that. But it's just that Kincaid's not used that way because the offense wants to use him in the flats. They want to use him more after the catch. And the biggest strength of his game at Utah was going up and getting the football. And I've just never really seen Josh Allen really make an effort to target him that way. And I think that's a function of the offense, not Josh Allen, because you look around and you don't see it as often with Coleman. You don't see it as often with Shakir. It's about, look, we're not favoring one guy. Just get to the open dude. And that's great for Josh Allen, and it's great for the offense. And look, it's a team game, so that works out great. But if you're going to look at Coleman, I think Coleman's more of a 700 to 800-yard receiver this year. Maybe gives you the lead in receiving touchdowns because of what he can do in isolated situations where they might try to let him go up and get it in, on some vertical shots occasionally or some red zone shots. But I think that really, if you're going to say, what's it going to take for these guys to really take that next step? I think it's going to take a different offense, and that doesn't help the team.
You're right. As the names have been invoked here, this is where I point out that Kincaid is a year older than Kyle Pitts, by the way. Although Pitts' career is 1, if not 2 years older, but Kincaid is a year older. Who says no? Matt Waldman on the West Her hotline. Well, we talked about James Cook this offseason, Matt, more than any other player here because of his contract stuff. This is meant to sort of be both a player and a fantasy question, but 2 rushing touchdowns to 2 rushing touchdowns to 16 rushing touchdowns. Yikes. I have read from you in fantasy that I think, if I'm not wrong here, you're comfortable with Cook at the 2-3 turn, which is earlier than he usually goes. So that's interesting to me. And just like what you see in this player, the Bills made what seems like sort of the obvious investment in him financially, just kind of a middle ground from what we had heard he wanted and what, they were paying him already based on his production seemed to fit nicely. How valuable is he here?
I think he's quite valuable. I mean, looking at, I think the Bills and Cook both mutually understood, look, Cook's like, I want to stay here. I mean, I'm on a winning team, and I'm getting to be the lead back on a winning team. And sure, Ray Davis is a fine teammate, and he can give a little bit more of a power element than I can. But I've shown that I can get enough volume to work between the tackles, and that you're going to use me in the red zone, and that you can use me in the passing game. And where else am I going to go and have a quarterback the caliber of Allen and the organization this caliber? So I think that's a good thing. And then from a fantasy standpoint, well, he's not my ideal target as a 2-3 turn. Like, I'm looking at guys like Devontae Adams, who I think is a bargain at that range, and I tend to go receivers probably second and third overall. But if I find myself in a situation where I think my build is good to go with, like, I could somehow get Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey back to back, which I have earlier in the summer. Honestly, with those two, I feel like I could screw up the next 4 picks and still be a decent contender. But like, if I just get one of those and then I decide that maybe I want to go 3 running backs overall and Cook is there as my third running back, I'm taking that all day, because I think there's enough value at receiver to make that bet in a league where you start 3 running backs. So, I mean, Cook, to me, I've always been a believer that there's so many ways to be successful as a running back in terms of body type, athletic ability. As long as you have good feet, you see things developing, and you understand how to manage the game within the scope of the blocking scheme that's in front of you and the down and distance. And Cook has all that. So, he's so quick, and he's slippery, and he understands, like Jamal Charles did, to really, attack first in between the tackles or in physical situations, so that you can be the one to dictate the chain of events that follow. And sometimes you can hit a bigger guy and set up a move because you've you understand the combinations of how to attack. And he does that pretty well. I don't know if I'd say he does it as well as Jamal Charles, but with that, with the lanes that he's getting and with the way that he can create, he's a very good back. I would say Aaron Jones is probably one of the most well-rounded guys who can give you, power, speed, quickness, receiving ability. He's in that neighborhood, I always joke when I do comparisons that like he's a middle class this or that. He's probably in the same subdivision as Aaron Jones, but maybe not in the back of the neighborhood where the biggest houses are.
Middle class or diet Aaron Jones, you hear that sometimes. Arbitrage. Yeah. Hearing you mention Jamal Charles, Matt, this isn't really so much for the current conversation, but most guys couldn't do most things as well as Jamal Charles. Who, just random question out of left field here, thinking about him and running backs as well as you speak on the subject, who is maybe your favorite running back to think about, to watch, analyze, going back, what's Jamal Charles, 10, 15 years ago, or even currently? Is there somebody here at this broad question that I'm forcing on you that immediately would be somebody you'd want to talk about and answer this question with?
Yeah, I can give you a couple I'll give you three that come to mind. Charles certainly is one of them because he fits what a scat back should look like in terms of how to run between the tackles with the attacking nature that I told you about, being able to, lower a shoulder into a defensive tackle if he's square to you, but being able to set up the spin off of it so that you're hitting him first. So before he can grab you, you've already slipped away. And there's a lot of other things about him that are great, but the guy who scouts and trainers and people I trusted who were in the league, who when I was learning this game mentioned who was probably the teaching tape for running backs, even long after his prime was over, is Frank Gore Jr.'s daddy.
Oh,
Frank Gore is maybe not, the fastest, the biggest, but he is so sophisticated in how well he sets up runs with his footwork, with his patience, how tight he can really press a crease. And I've shown some things on my site, the difference between, say, aging Frank Gore in Indianapolis and Marlon Mack in Indianapolis running the same play. And I've also shown one of where Frank Gore runs a play that looks like it's trouble, and Anthony McFarland running the same play and getting the same type of trouble, and seeing how old Frank Gore gets 15 yards and how Anthony McFarland gets stuffed in the backfield. So his ability to really set up runs and read the field. Frank Gore is, to me, like Nick Chubb's dad. Okay, like Nick Chubb would be on that list too. And then I think the best running back I've ever seen, at least for a period of time in the past 20 years, maybe 25, let's say 25 years, the best running back that I like to watch, and I'll go back and watch his tape when I can, is the first 2 years of Edgerrin James. Edgerrin James' ability to drop his weight and be so sudden in and out of cuts, but have the power and the pad level, even the post-injury Edgerrin James with the Colts in short yardage, which is really a very difficult thing to be able to do well. His ability to get lower than his man was always a saving grace. But I think Edgerrin James could have been one of the best backs of all time if he had stayed healthy and didn't have that devastating knee injury that changed the way that he ran a little bit. Still a very good back, obviously, a Hall of Famer, but I think he would have been a record-breaking runner based on the first 2 years that he had in the league, because he could do it all. And then one guy that, if you're an old-timer like me,
let's go,
or supposedly is William Andrews out of Atlanta.
Wow.
Walter Payton once got interviewed in Sport Magazine, who would he block for in the league if he was a chance to block for anybody. And he said, well, Matt Suhey, because he was my fullback. He said, but the other guy is William Andrews, because I just love the way he plays. He was one of the first backs to get 2,000 combined yards, and he did it 2 years in a row before Roger Craig. And he literally laid the wood to Ronnie Lott a couple of times in some highlights you can find on YouTube. And he was blocking for Joe Cribbs at Auburn.
Yes.
At that time. So William Andrews, if you never heard of him, go watch some William Andrews, because that dude was insanely good, but he had an ACL tear mid-career, and he had nerve damage in his toe, and it was literally just running a play on grass in summer camp, and he forever changed his career. But he was, and then some of his stats were on par with guys like Barry Sanders and the top end runners in the league during the time that he was in his prime.
Love it. No worries if our younger listeners don't know who that is, but as it happens, Matt, if people were listening yesterday, they heard his name on this show yesterday too. Because Sal Capaccio, our beat reporter, and I were talking, and we got to the subject. We're talking about uniforms, these rivalry uniforms and throwbacks and everything. And Sal just happened to mention the Falcons are wearing their 80s, I guess, uniform, the red helmets, when they play the Bills this year. And he asked me, who do you think of when you think of that uniform? I said, William Andrews. And so,
good taste.
There's a streak going here. William Andrews, welcome back to the show today. Just to close on fantasy here, Matt, like you've mentioned a couple of strategies already, and you can read Matt at footballguys.com. What's your perfect start? Like where you'd want to be picking, and just sort of your basic 12-team PPR format.
Sure, and if you want to find some more of this work, I have a draft plan at footballguys.com where I do 2 iterations of it, and I show you when I pick early, from the middle of the draft, and at the end of a order, and I do it for 1 QB and 2 quarterback leagues, and I give you different options of what I'm doing in players I like, but also alternate picks, so you can kind of mess with your builds. But I always like picking at the end. I always like picking at 11th or 12th. I feel like I see the board best from that range. And because of the fact that Derrick Henry is sitting there late, and often a guy that I can get because people are worried about his age, just like they were last year. But I like running back, like a running back with a great offensive line who is generally a safe player because he's skilled and has a great offensive line and usually a good passing game to also complement it. And I could do that early. Then I'll go with wide receivers, for the next 3 to 4 picks as a result of that. And I feel like that I can get good players that way. And then I can go with a block of running backs, that some people call the dead zone for running backs, and they don't, they're worried about that. But you can get young talent like a Caleb Johnson. You can often get at that range, or a David Montgomery, who people look at David Montgomery and they're sitting there going, well, Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy to have, but Jahmyr Gibbs going out for more passes might actually make him more sacrificial than actually productive. And a lot of people are kind of missing that. I think he'll still be very good, but you can get a guy like Montgomery, and he's going to be getting red zone touches and closeout touches behind a good offensive line, or Aaron Jones combined with Jordan Mason. Everybody's poo-pooing that in the way of saying that, well, Mason's going to take a lot of touches, but I would dare say Aaron Jones as a receiver and a runner is a better player than Jahmyr Gibbs, just older. And he's always gotten it done, even when he's been in committees in Green Bay. And if they decide they're going to, use him a little bit more like Jahmyr Gibbs, well, he was Jahmyr Gibbs before Jahmyr Gibbs, if you ask me, just didn't have the system to do it. So if I can land him as well and have a Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, and an Aaron Jones and take some chances later, I can get a bunch of receivers, and then I can take chances on guys like Caleb Williams, or I can go with the safe pick of Brock Purdy or Jared Goff in the 8th or 9th round and take a chance on some of the later tight ends. Like, to me, Pat Freiermuth is hilariously low right now because everybody's worried about Jonnu Smith, but the Steelers have said he's the heartbeat of the offense, and with Russell Wilson, he was on track for an 8 or 9 touchdown season. And with Aaron Rodgers, I think you're going to see him actually lead the Steelers in touchdowns this year, not DK Metcalf. I think he's going to be the touchdown leader because of how good he is as a contested catch player. And I could get a guy like him and Colston Loveland and get, Freiermuth in like 15th, 16th round. And that's pretty nice. And I feel like if there's a position that you can kind of take risks with, that's the one. So why not?
I'm drafting tight end premium all the time, and he won't even get picked. Last night I did a 350 stakes league, and 30 tight ends got picked, and he was not among them, Freiermuth. So that's a really good take. Well, covered a lot of ground here. Always love talking to you. Dalton Kincaid is older than Kyle Pitts, but younger than Tyler Shuck. So remember that as we part here, Matt. Whatever that's worth to you.
And he's probably gonna have a better season than both of them. We'll find out.
I would think. Certainly than Shug, probably. Thanks again, Matt. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend and the season, of course.
You too, fellas.
Thank you. Matt Waldman on the West Her hotline. We'll take a break here. Look for your calls at 803-0550. Want to talk about the Micah Parsons trade and some other stuff. Fantasy Friday, we used to do that. It's Friday. The season is next week. Football Friday, of course. It's all happening. Lines are open. Mike Schopp here, WGR.
Off day today for the Buffalo Bills, but game week next week. We'll get more on that when Sal Capaccio joins the show in just about a half hour at 5 p.m. Patriots did release safety Jabril Peppers. Peppers did play 85 games for the Patriots. He also had $4.32 million of guaranteed money remaining on his contract for this season. But tonight, more college football. Week 1 got underway last night. Tonight, we have 2 games at 8 o'clock. Colorado hosting Georgia Tech and Auburn. They are in Waco to take on Baylor. And then looking ahead to this weekend, 3 top 10 matchups. On Saturday at noon, number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. Then 7:30 on Saturday, number 4 Clemson hosts number 9 LSU. While on Sunday night, number 6 Notre Dame is in South Florida versus number 10 Miami. And then in baseball, Bison's on the road versus Indianapolis just after 7 o'clock. Game can be heard on our sister station, The Bet 1520. Then just after 7 o'clock, the Jays host Milwaukee, while the Mets, they also will be at home. They host the Marlins. And at 7:40, Yankees on the road in Chicago to take on the White Sox. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Without being too broad, obviously, we did think it was in the best interest of our organization, not only the future, but right now, this season as well. We've gained a Pro Bowl player in an area that we had big concern in on the inside of our defense. We need to stop the run. We haven't been able to stop the run at key times for several years. When you have the kind of extraordinary pass rush that Michael had, then the way to mitigate that pass rush is to run at you. If the pass rush doesn't get you ahead pretty big time and you're playing even or behind, then you've really got a problem in stopping the run.
How embarrassing. Jerry Jones. It can't have been an accident that multiple times he referred to Micah Parsons as Michael. Reminded me of when I was getting to know Chuck Dickerson and he would incorrectly pronounce Tom Donahoe's name on purpose, just to sort of like tweak. And we went to a commercial one day, like, why are you doing that? He's like, you know why I'm doing that. Like, so bad. I mean, really, he doesn't have enough respect for Parsons to call him by his name. I mean, was it supposed to be that we didn't notice? Was he asked? Man, if I were in that room, I would have been like, you know that you're doing that, right? Like, I would have wanted it. I'm not sure I would have had the nerve, but Is that an accident? You don't know his name, or what's happening here? Wow. I was thinking about, well, we all were yesterday, like this trade and that franchise and Jerry Jones himself. It is, I'll explain this. It is Sabres adjacent. Like, what's worse? What's the worst feeling for a fan of a sports team to have about his or her team? Like, what's the lowest you can feel? I think when your team's leadership is incompetent, like when you're a laughing stock, and it might feel like there's just no way around it. And, of course, usually a fan can hope for his owner to can the dodo bird general manager, or, fingers crossed, hope that his randomly good GM that you sort of lucked into doesn't leave and escape the Dodo Bird owner. Dodo Bird doesn't get used enough. I feel like I want to bring back Dodo Bird. Was the Dodo Bird before it went extinct and before it became, was it actually known as like the Eastern Maryland Pip Hatch or something, but then it went extinct and we just had to call it a Dodo Bird? I think it probably was the other way around. So again, back to the point. Your lowest existence, I think, as a fan is if you just have no hope that your team's management is able or willing to figure it out. And it couldn't be both. The Dallas Cowboys should be able, the Sabres are different in this important respect. The Dallas Cowboys, American sports' most valuable franchise, you would think should be able to attract players and just, all else equal, consistently win. But they don't. They're usually pretty good. but they don't. They don't consistently win. And that would just be like, if you're a Cowboys fan, like a real one, if you're a Cowboys fan, you would just be probably like incredulous. How is this not, how have I not been to a championship game in 30 years? Like, just, how is this real? How are we trading Micah Parsons for draft picks and have the owner, who's also the GM, that's their problem, the dodo, he's both dodo birds, like, and have him call him by a different name at the press conference like he thinks it's funny. He either thinks it's funny or he's just senile, but I don't believe him to be senile. I feel like it's all been calculated. And a lot of people, everybody's saying that Parsons rubbed him the wrong way earlier in the offseason, and Jones, like, he's not going to play for me anymore. And the whole business about communicating with the player, negotiating with the player, and not the agent, just amateur hour. I just think that that's the lowest you can be. The Cowboys don't have a palm trees problem they can point to. Like, they don't have any excuse. They can't stand there and tell you how they are disadvantaged, like the Sabres have and do, like, frequently. They've done lots of that. And they're not always off base, I mean, I think for all the fun we had with palm trees from Kevin Adams, there's truth in it. You just never want to hear publicly, especially your team's leadership, make that excuse. Because what are you actually saying? I can't do this job. It's too hard. Okay, well, any owner that I could, conjure up in my mind would get someone else the next day. I'm going to find somebody who thinks they can do this job. Thank you, though. Thank you for your service. That can't fly. The Cowboys' plight is that Jones is all of it. He's in control of the whole thing. And I think that's probably a really lonely feeling for the fans who just seeing the team get embarrassed like that. Absolutely embarrassing. I'm not even to stop the run yet. I'm not even to, like, the general manager of an NFL team in the year 2025 thinks the more important thing here was to stop the run. I mean, he doesn't have the internet. Anybody who would say that just does not have the internet. It just, like, it's incredible. So it was cheap and just completely embarrassing. And, the beat goes on, right? They're not going to be the most valuable franchise because of this. And anything can work. Maybe they'll win. Maybe this trade won't completely alienate all the players and make them wonder how fast they can get out of there. And it'll actually somehow have the reverse effect. Anything can work. One of these years, maybe the Sabres can line up a goalie season with a year where they can score. Like, they've been scoring, but then goaltending slipped. And they really haven't had goaltending be top third. How many years out of the 15 years have they had that? A couple, maybe. But one of these years, maybe it'll line up for them. And despite all their failures over the years, they'll get in the playoffs. What's a good year for the Sabres? To make the playoffs. What's a good year for Dallas? To make the second round, maybe? They do not make the semis. They do not make the championship round. They've had Tony Romo and then Dak Prescott, two excellent quarterbacks for a long time, and it has not been enough. In the NFC, where you're losing to Jordan Love and Brock Purdy instead, which both of those things have happened in the playoffs to Dallas in recent years. I don't know. I think if you have a knucklehead coach, just try to mix it up, move over to knucklehead. If you have a knucklehead coach or, say you have that's just not going to last long. Most of the time, Housley with the Sabres, using them again. Okay, well, this guy is not it. Hopefully this doesn't take too long for the Sabres to figure that out. 2 years went by, and then there he went. You have the coach who just isn't good enough. Time will pass, and he'll be gone. Bad roster. The draft is there to help you. The system is built to help you. And, okay, well, things start to fall right. We thought they had for the Sabres with Murray that here you've got Eichel happening and Reinhart happening and, a couple of trades. And, like, this is how you do it. This is how the Blackhawks went from this ultimate embarrassment of a franchise to the top. And their owner died, which they needed, probably. Like, they were the Cowboys a little bit with Bill Wirtz. It's how it happens. You can have that hope. But when your owner is, just way off, and he loves the spotlight, and he's the GM, odds aren't great. And this is really, I think, a low point. For as many shots as have been taken at Dallas and Jerry Jones over the years, all these years of coming up short, this, I think, is a new low. Trading, you do not see players like this in sports get traded. Maybe if they play for the Rays or something, and there's just no way their team is going to meet the contract demands, then they get traded. The Sabres are a little bit of that too. I mean, historically, all those guys, I listened to the morning guys today, and Joe DiBiase at one point said, name a great Sabres player who ended his career here. I'll give you an hour. After Perro, just name any great player who, and I started to think, I'm like, does Pominville count? Not really. Like, he was good, if not very good, but he left and came back. Like, that doesn't even really count. But like, everybody kind of great in their history, just they alienated and they left. And it's just like too depressing to even think about. And that's with different ownership. Doesn't seem to matter. If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. But what a scene, Dallas. Like, this does not happen. It only ever would happen to a team that doesn't want to spend the money. It could happen to the Bengals. It does not, it should not happen to the Cowboys. And it did. And other than the fact that he actually was traded, meaning that we knew the whole time with Parsons, Micah Parsons, even I know his name, we knew the whole time with him that as time passed, his price was going up. And the Cowboys were like, wow, these guys are really stupid. Like, they don't realize that. They weren't stupid. They didn't care. That's what I think we learned by their having made this trade. They weren't blind to that. They just didn't care. Because we're not going to pay them. Don't you think? That's what ended up being the story there. People didn't expect the trade because it doesn't happen. And we focused on the fact that they were going to end up spending way more than they need to. No, they were never going to spend anything. They were never going to sign him. Michael Parsons. I mean, it's one thing for Terry Pagula to, be at a league meeting or something and talk about Antoine Baldwin when he meant Anquan Bolden, reportedly. Like, that's unbelievable. But this is a star on your team that you traded today. And just like, obviously that was intentional, right? I mean, that had to be intentional. Sal Capaccio coming up at 5. This is Mike Schopp on WGR. Welcome back almost to Labor Day weekend. Thanks for joining me. Mike Schopp, Sal Capaccio will be along with me in about 11 minutes. I mentioned having heard the morning show today, and one topic I heard them bring up on the heels of the Parsons trade. Jeremy said, what's a sports trade in your life that you most hated? Or the trade in your life that you most hated? And I didn't have any example immediately come to mind, but these guys started rattling off 10, 20 players, taking texts and different names coming up, recent Sabres, older, Bills too, like possible answers. They talked about Jason Peters. They talked about Marshawn Lynch, Ryan O'Reilly, Dominic Hasek. What I remember about Hasek is I learned something from the Hasek trade. Because that season was my first back in Buffalo from Rochester and being on the air here. And I did a show with Mike Robitaille and the late, great Jim Kelly before every game, the Sharpshooters it was called. And the season ends. I mentioned the game yesterday, the Kasparaitis goal, and there goes Dom, spring of 2001. And then Hasek is traded to Detroit, however much longer, a month or two later in the offseason. And I was talking about it with Jim. And, you know, coming at it from a viewpoint that, well, they didn't, you know, they had to do it. He wasn't going to play for them. And he said, you know what? There's something else they could have done, though, other than trade Hasek to Detroit. And I said, what? He said, not trade Hasek. It was up to them. They chose to do it. And I think, you know, thinking of that and so many other Sabres episodes, what you want to do is not have it get to a point where the player doesn't think he can win with you, which has happened almost in the entirety of Sabres history. Their best players become disillusioned and want to leave, almost maybe like no other team in hockey, if not pro sports. Very few teams have that unfortunate distinction. So he's like, you know, what you could have done is not traded him. Like, you know what? Good point. You're right. That's true. See the whole board, Mike. I thought of, if I needed an answer for their show, it would have been Len Dykstra. Because I was a huge Mets fan in the 80s. And they'd won in 86, they'd won the division in 88, and in 89, it wasn't going so well. And they traded Dykstra and Roger McDowell, two very popular Mets, two World Series winning Mets, to Philadelphia for Juan Samuel, who was good. I mean, very good, even. But it's the kind of trade you just hated it. Like, it was the end kind of the Mets thing. It was another step toward the end. And you took two super popular cog players on the team and just, there they go. It was like a little bit, this was bigger when the Sabres traded Gare to the Red Wings. You know, like that was a bigger, more player, maybe 7 players involved, a bigger trade. Shocking, but I was 10 years old. This Met one, though, I think that would be my answer. I remember also being a Leaf fan, finding out from Jeff Legwald, who covers the Broncos now, was a colleague of mine in Rochester, and he called, I worked for the baseball team in Rochester, and he called the press box from the NHL draft. He was covering the NHL draft. And he's like, Mike, bad news. Wendell Clark just got traded to Quebec. And that definitely crushed me. Matt Sundin, I think, but still, like Jeremy rightly pointed out this morning, there are those trades that you hate them at the time, sentimental. I don't know that the Met trade was really bad, although Dykstra was good for several years after that. I don't know about the other guys. And sometimes you hated the trade and you were right to, because it was stupid and did not turn out. So there's two different kinds of these. Sal Capaccio after the update. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
living in sin so long, all the feels are gone. Fella stopped me on the street last night, said everything's alright. Roller coaster, make it through the day upright. It seems your meal ticket is gone, but life goes on. I could never imagine something better. Yeah, right. Now you're cooking on high heat in the middle of the street. Roller coaster, take me to a better time. Let's go. All sing your high line with the roller coaster of life. Yeah. It's time to all choose your timeline on the roller coaster of life. You seem to easily forget how to place your bet. When everyday life gets you down, you gotta steal the crown. Got to own it. Don't bitch and moan about it, please. God forbid you scrape your knees, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, I've told you over and over again. You gotta get both hands around it and make your own plans. Roller coaster, it's taking over, it's about time. Oh, all sing your high line on the roller coaster of life. You've got to
The long wait for Bills football is almost over. Game week next weekend. For anything you missed over the past few days, we do have pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. And we'll get more on the Bills and this week. Sal Capaccio joins the show next. Patriots released safety Jabril Peppers. Peppers did play 85 games for the Patriots over his years with the club, and he does still have $4.32 million of guaranteed money remaining on his contract for this year. We've also got college football action tonight. Week 1 got underway yesterday, and tonight the marquee games, 2 of them at 8 o'clock. Colorado hosting Georgia Tech, and then Auburn, they are in Waco versus Baylor. Then over the weekend, 3 top 10 matchups. Saturday, tomorrow at noon, number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. Then at 7:30, number 4 Clemson hosts number 9 LSU. And then on Sunday night, number 6 Notre Dame is in South Florida versus number 10 Miami. Bison's on the road versus Indianapolis just after 7 o'clock. That game can be heard over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. And then just after 7 o'clock, the Jays do host Milwaukee, and the Mets host the Marlins, while at 7:40, the Yankees, they are in Chicago versus the White Sox. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Things have wrapped up in this second division English soccer game I had on. Is it second division? It's the one below Premier League, Championship. I'm not sure if they call that, they might even call that first division. But Leicester over Birmingham, 2-0. Love learning about new names, new English soccer team names. Cheltenham is one that I didn't know before today. Cheltenham. Plymouth Argyle is one. And what did we get from the team that beat Manchester United? Grimsby Town. That's nice. It seems like there's an endless array of cool English soccer town names. With me now on the, I'm sure he shares this opinion, Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline, leaving his podcast appearance down in Irving. Big college weekend, Sal, before we get to the NFL season. Your Orange are in Atlanta to face Tennessee. Texas, Ohio State is the headliner. And I was thinking of that when I was thinking about, the Bills opening with Baltimore, because you've got this Ravens game and then, several games in a row where the Bills might be or are pretty big favorites. Do you like it that way for them with this, maybe the hardest game on their schedule right away?
Yeah, well, first of all, speak for yourself. The headliner is Syracuse and Tennessee, I would say.
Okay.
No,
fine.
It's fun. It is last night I was watching the UB game, and who was it? Myers calling the game, and he said, I can't remember a week 1 this good. Like how many really good football games there are this weekend in week 1, and there've been some really nice ones over the years, but this is amazing. Yeah, I do from a college standpoint. I don't love it from the NFL standpoint. Last year, I really liked when the Bills opened with the Cardinals. Because I wasn't, you remember the year before was Monday night, the year before was Thursday night, right. This year Sunday night. I kind of like a nice routine Sunday 1 p.m. game. You have all these other really big games later. You got 17 games in the year, then and you play them as you go. College is different. Now they are playing 11 games now, 12, whatever. I know that there's more. You only play teams once, even in your conference. And when you step outside the conference, that's when you do it. You do it early in the season to get it going. So I like the real good matchup early in the season like this.
Yeah. The soft open last year that was Arizona. And that was a good game. The Cardinals got ahead in that game, and the Bills were tested. Well, we don't have to wait until next week, but we haven't really dug in on the Ravens matchup. And I'm not sure there's really much new. I mean, we've talked about these teams together, of course, multiple times before. Do you see them the way the betting markets do, the way the playoff game was, is pretty much dead even?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I think they are very even teams. I think the game, like last year, could come down to a couple turnovers here or there. I mean, I thought the Ravens outplayed the Bills overall last year, but the Bills got the turnovers, and that's what helped them win the game. It was a big deal. So I think a game like that, there was a couple, the drop pass, of course, by Mark Andrews, and he had a couple of tough plays in that game, including a turnover and a fumble. That's, to me, what a game like this comes down to. I think it's two even teams, so you make one or two critical mistakes, and it swings the game. I don't think it's an indictment on the loser to being the worst team, the lesser team. We saw that last year. The Bills beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs still finished ahead in the standings. The Ravens beat the Bills. The Bills still finished ahead in the standings. So I do find them very, very equal, I guess, to one another. I think, when you say anything new, that's right. Nothing is, but I think what we're monitoring is the injuries, right? For the Bills, it's just a bunch of guys, mainly Tre'Davious White, and now Christian Benford a little bit, Curtis Samuel. And for the Ravens, it's Isaiah Likely, because I think he's a really big part of what they do. It'd be tough for me to see him already playing a ton in week one, considering he's come back from that foot injury. But it'll be interesting if he's on the field practicing next week.
I'm guessing he doesn't. I don't know, but it sounded like an 8-week injury. They did not put him on IR. The conversations we've had about Trey White and even Max Hairston, who did end up going to IR for at least 4 weeks. Well, the injuries are a big thing, and spotlight on the secondary, as we've talked about a lot, with Trey White in mind, and even the uncertainty at the safety position, Sal, if that's even the word at this point. It was a couple of weeks ago when I was on with Joe Ostrowski, Sam Panayotovich yesterday on their Bet Sweats show. Joe asked me, what is like the biggest area of concern for the Bills? And he later told me, I really thought you'd say receiver, which, that's our brand and everything. But it's the secondary, and the line did move toward Baltimore, which I think might be as much of because of the Trey White situation as anything else. Not that the Bills still aren't favored by a smidge there, but secondary was going into the offseason and is going into the season for me, and maybe for you, that the answer to that question.
I would agree. To me, secondary and defensive line was always the biggest need heading into the offseason. And we can go back to January, February, really after March, after free agency, and I was pretty strong on the fact that they would spend a lot of draft capital on that side of the ball and mostly at defensive line, and they're going to draft a corner somewhere pretty high. It turned out it was their first pick, which is Max Hairston, and then they did go defensive line with the next couple of picks. They also obviously went out and they signed Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, then we find out he's suspended, Larry Ogunjobi, find out he's suspended. So, yeah, I think they approached this offseason, Mike, with the same answer from an organizational standpoint to what you're saying, which is, where are the deficiencies, or where do you have to address? And that included secondary. When you went out and signed Tre'Davious White, you signed Dane Jackson, you take Max Hairston with your first overall pick. So to me, it was both secondary and defensive line. But I think in this type of league, the way that you play in this game, like secondary was always a bit of a concern because you have to go out there and defend so much of the field against these great quarterbacks and receivers.
Right. We tend to, I think, collectively look down on the Dolphins, who the Bills will have here in Week 3. But there is, there's danger in that passing game if the Bills are less than right in the secondary. Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp, and Bulldog is off today. Well, I was looking at a chart that made the rounds today after the Micah Parsons trade about pressure rate, and how Dallas has ranked, maybe this was a PFF chart, I'm not sure, might have been, first in the league over the last few years in creating pressure. And the Bills line, going through, say, the last 5 years, they were up there until last year, and then last year it dropped off. I'm thinking about Bosa here, Sal. Like, what are your expectations for him? Healthy to start the season? How much will he play? And how good can he be?
Mike, I've thought about this. I just did the pod with Matt, as you know, Matt Bove. We were out here, at Signals, and we talked about Bosa a little bit and this kind of thing. Not the same way you framed it, but super interesting for me because I find myself not. I'm stopping myself from getting as kind of excited of what he can be because I really think that he looked good in camp and he looked healthy in camp. And I think if Joey Bosa is healthy, I think he could be a real difference maker on this team. And I'm stopping myself short of believing that to be the case simply because he's had the injury concerns and the Bills have been down this road before with other players, namely, obviously, Von Miller. But I do think that the way he's looked in camp, how healthy he's been, and the fact that he's rolling into the season healthy, it is a really encouraging sign and could be extremely beneficial to this defense. How much he plays, honestly, I think that, he'll be out there quite a bit. And, yeah, there's going to be load management, but I don't think load management to me has to mean for this guy, well, we're just going to, monitor his reps during the game. I think it's more like, when can we give him a little break? Like, what's the score in the fourth quarter? What's the situation? Is it a game where it's just – and by the way, he's not a bad run defender. Not saying he would come off the field in run situations, but, maybe when it's a different situation and it's more of a run game type of game, that he's not on the field as much. And when you're going passing, he is. But I think he's going to be out there quite a bit, to be honest.
A caller a day or two ago made a point, just sort of a passing comment, that the Bills have a better roster than a year ago. And I sat with that and tried to analyze it. I actually, when doing so, was comparing starting lineups and had sort of Hoyt and Ogunjobi kind of slipped my mind when thinking about this. And I appreciate that it was brought to my attention. Those are two, especially Hoyt, important, relatively important acquisitions, if not very, in terms of Hoyt. I think that could be really interesting. But the offense, the starting 11 is probably the same as last year. It was Coleman and Shakir on the field. I think it's the first play by how they do it, starting lineup, but could be the same 11 guys as last year. Defensively, there are some changes. How would you put that? Would you just sort of could you easily say it's a better roster than last year? I know we don't know what the rookies are going to be yet, especially Hairston.
Yeah, I guess so. Offensively, it would be the same except for maybe Joshua Palmer is in.
Yep.
Right? And who they lose? Amari Cooper and Mac Hollins. So really, you're really exchanging one for one with Hollins because Cooper wasn't there yet. So I don't think there's anything different there. Okay, so defensively, it is tough because Hoyt isn't going to be on the field yet. You got to wait 6 games for him. I thought he was the best defender at training camp for the Bills, if you give it any occasion. I think that's how much he can help the team. I thought Michael Hoyt, from start of training camp through the final preseason game, was the best defensive player on the Buffalo Bills roster. Now, some of that is opportunity going against second and third stringers because they played him more, right? So that being said, I do want to have that caveat. So I do think that's an upgrade about him being on the roster and what he can do. I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you can look at it. Bove, it's funny. He just said this to me the other day. We were out of the facility. He said, Sal, have you gone back and looked at who started in that Arizona game for them on defense?
I have it.
No. He said, go look at who started on defense compared to who's starting on defense this year. And, his takeaway was, and I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you can find it.
I have it.
His takeaway was, oh, my goodness, yes, it's a much better defense now. Matt Milano wasn't on the field that game. Taron Johnson, by the way, he went out of that game. He got hurt in that game, and he went out, and I forgot about that. They lost Taron Johnson in the middle of that game. So, yeah, I just by judging by that and thinking about it, I think that they have to be better, at least I think from your starting 22.
It is different. I'm not sure how quick I'd be to say better. Milano had such a great career. You'd probably have to give him the nod over Dorian Williams a year ago. It's Bosa instead of Epinesa. Epinesa isn't bad. We'll see what Bosa is, but you can be excited there. It's Bishop over Hamlin, assuming Bishop starts against Baltimore.
A total unknown for sure. That could go either way.
That could go either way. And it's Trey White, maybe, instead of Rasul Douglas. And I would not be I'm not ready to give Trey White the nod there. Even if he's healthy. I think that could be I don't know. Douglas last year, Sal, no picks. He played the whole season. And I know they won all the time, but we were never in here after games being like, what's wrong with Rasul Douglas? It wasn't at a high level, and you didn't get those plays, like I said. But I didn't remember thinking all year that he was getting them beat, like Elam did. Elam was another matter. So, I don't know. If Trey White has that season, which, it's saying, assuming a lot. It's just no interceptions, everything that went with it. But I'm not sure if it's that good or bad. It's sort of neutral for me.
It's interesting you say that. I do remember a lot of talk about Rasul Douglas last year, but you're right. It wasn't in the manner that, oh, my God, he got cooked. It was plain as day to see. For me, going back and watching and listening and looking at other people break things down, it was more about he just didn't make plays that he may have made the year before.
Yeah.
And that means, like, when the ball was in the air, instead of making a play, guy catches it, he tackles him, right? So you're not, like, seeing him get beat down the field, but their teams went after him, and he didn't come up with the same sort of stops that he did the year before. That was the thing about Russell Douglas that I remember last year, and that's, I think, what translated into him not having those picks, whereas the year before, he was making plays on the football, and he just didn't make those plays last year. It was more like, okay, guy catches it, he tackles him in front of him. So he's not getting beat. You're not seeing that, but you're also not seeing the game-changing play. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to be happening with Tre'Davious White. Now, there's two parts to this. Is he healthy? Next Wednesday's the first day that we can find out if he practices, if he's going to have an injury designation, exactly what that injury is that's listed if he does have an injury designation. We'll see about that. And then the second part is, if he is healthy, is he good enough? Is he going to help the team? Is he going to be a quality level starting cornerback in the NFL? I think those things definitely remain to be seen right now.
Right. Yeah, a defense can get in trouble quick if there's a weak link, and whether it's him or his replacement, if he's not healthy, you know that teams are going to try to exploit that. We'll see how that goes if that happens, but they'll try. A few minutes left here with Sal Capaccio. When we spoke yesterday, we did not have the Micah Parsons news yet. I hate every time to sound the way to sound how I think everybody else sounds. It's just so one-way traffic on this trade, and how big of an embarrassment Jerry Jones is, calling him Michael Parsons too, like. That had to be intentional. Yikes, Sal. Do you have a cleverer angle on this trade to make Dallas, look better than it sounds like most of us think, or maybe not?
No, not really. I think that the thing for me about Dallas was that they were forced into a situation that they could have controlled from the start, right? Like they were at a point where they kind of had to make this deal and get something done, but that's because of themselves and their own doing. And it goes back to something I've always said about Jerry Jones, at least over the last several years, which is Jerry Jones has long believed and still believes, and it's just not true anymore, and maybe at one time it was true, that there is just some special thing, an allure about playing for the Dallas Cowboys that everybody knows that he does not have to do what other owners have to do. I won't own the Dallas Cowboys. There's a star on the side of the helmet. We're the Dallas Cowboys. We're America's team, so you should be grateful that we want you to play for us, and therefore you don't have to sign to a larger contract, and I don't expect you to sign a larger contract. That is not the case anymore. The Dallas Cowboys have not been good in a quarter of a century, more than that. And I think that Jerry Jones doesn't understand that.
Yeah. I wonder what happens to the team now. Like, were they expecting – some people were expecting this trade. I think in the public we were not. I wonder what the players' expectations were about this. I mean, mine were that they just sign him last minute and he plays against Philadelphia on Thursday night. That's not happening. Mm-hmm. So what's your guess? Does the team come apart or –
No, I think already. I think in Dallas that happens anyway, just because there's so much going on. There's so much distraction. It's all about the noise. It's not about the football in Dallas. So I think definitely think that can happen here. I don't think they're talented enough anyway to compete with the Eagles for the division. I mean, who knows? Maybe they have a great game next Thursday and they wind up winning, and everybody says, "Oh my God, look what happened! Micah Parsons got traded." And as you always say, you wait for the results before you then you have the narrative after, right? Maybe that happens. I just don't think they're good enough to compete. And probably not with Washington either, to be quite honest with you. I think maybe the more interesting facet of it is from the other side. I think what the Packers did is fascinating to me.
Sure.
I mean, they're going for it. They believe they have a Super Bowl team, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I don't know if I'm there on Jordan Love, like they must feel they're there, or maybe they don't, which is why they wanted to get the pass rushers and say, we got to have a little help there because we don't have a Tier 1 quarterback over here, even though he's really good and we like him. Also, for many years, this is not something the Packers would do. They would not do something like this, pretty much ever. Andrew Brandt wrote about this. Andrew Brandt, who worked in their front office, basically totally dismissed the Packers when it was first coming up. Like, no, this is not something they do. But remember, Mark Murphy is no longer the president there. He's from Clarence, Mark Murphy. He's no longer the president. Do you know who the president is now of the Green Bay Packers?
No.
Eddie Policy, Carmen Policy's son.
Oh, I wonder how he got that job.
And he came from the Niners, right? The Niners lineage, where, winning Super Bowls and I think being aggressive and go back in the Deion Sanders, things like that, right? This is, I just think it's kind of a different thing for the Packers now.
Yeah. Yeah. Elliot Wolf is the Patriots GM now, right? And or vice president of player. I wonder how he got. Oh, right, Ron Wolf's son. Sure, yeah, makes sense. Yesterday they were writing about how awful his first year was. Yeah, geez, he's qualified. He's got to be qualified though. All right, sorry if I sound bitter. Sal, enjoy Labor Day weekend, and we will fire things up week 1 next week.
All right, you got it. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. His appearance is brought to you by New York's only outlet liquor. Your place to buy a case. Outlet Liquor. What's your outlet? Yes to the Green Bay points, but Parsons is young. This does not have to be – this is not Von Miller. This is a player that you'd want to have retire for your team in 7 or 8 years or whatever that might be. I'm not thinking that it might be a shorter shelf life than, say, a quarterback, but who knows? This is short-term and long-term. And we saw yesterday their betting lines move as soon as this trade became public, in their favor, of course. But I think if they don't win this year, you can ask the questions about Jordan Love independently. But if he's good or even very good, they don't win this year, you might like him just as much next year, right? Parsons he was on his first contract, I think. 803-0550 for your calls. I heard a listener call in this morning and say he was glad that the Bills wouldn't have made this move. I want to be careful with the wording. Wouldn't have made this move. And Jeremy and Joe both said, well, we don't know that. In fact, I think they would have. If they had the player, what would have happened? They wouldn't have traded him. They would have signed him, if the player was agreeable. So I think that's right. I think, yesterday we heard from some fans that were frustrated that the Bills didn't do this specific thing or something like it. Hendrickson, the big names that we have fun talking about in the offseason every year. I didn't think that was so fair. They've won a lot, but they haven't won it all. What do you think? Lines are open for your calls. I'll be back after the update. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
Next week is game week for the Buffalo Bills. Off day today. If you missed anything from this week, we have pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. Patriots released safety Jabril Peppers today. Peppers played 85 games with the organization and does still have $4.32 million of guaranteed money remaining on his contract for this season. And then a packed window of college football. It started yesterday, continues into today, and throughout the weekend. The marquee games tonight, 2 at 8. Colorado hosting Georgia Tech, and then Auburn is in Waco to take on Baylor. Tomorrow, 2 top 10 matchups of the 3 for this weekend. At noon, number 1 Texas at number 3 Ohio State. Then at 7:30 on Saturday, number 4 Clemson hosts number 9 LSU. Then on Sunday night, number 6 Notre Dame is in South Florida versus number 10 Miami. Bisons are on the road tonight versus Indianapolis. That'll get going just after 7 o'clock. The game can be heard on our sister station, the Bet 1520. Then just after 7, the Jays host Milwaukee and the Mets host the Marlins, while at 7:40, the Yankees are in Chicago to take on the White Sox. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Welcome back. Just checking the longer-term forecast here for, well, next Sunday. 69 and sunny, and then 75 and 78 to follow. So that's a week from, that's the Bills opener and then the days to follow. Sounds like it could or should be perfect for that game. They can start to taste it, Ravens-Bills, and as you don't need me to tell you if you follow this stuff, a lot very well may ride on it. I mean, the Bills they started 3-0, but then the 2 losses to Baltimore and Houston set them back in the standings in a way that just would have been hard to believe. I mean, what was Kansas City? Kansas City was undefeated because they were undefeated when they came here, and they wouldn't have had their bye week that early, right? So would you have been 3-2 with the Chiefs at 5-0 through week 5 last year? Probably. Their bye week was in week 6. So you start 3-0 like they did, and then you lose to the Ravens, which, I'm sure we were talking that week about what could be at stake there. Baltimore had already lost a game, I know, by then, but still. And then the Texans game, and now you're 2 back of Kansas City, but with 12 games left and 1 against the Chiefs. Imagine, maybe this is not crazy to you, but I think it would have been to me. Imagine thinking that the Bills would go, 12 left, right? 3-2. They would have gone 10-1 from there. No, 9-2 from there. Why is this so hard? Hang on a minute. Because they lost the last week to New England. They ended up with the 4 losses, 13 wins. From 3-2 to 13-3, 10-1. That was right. Losing only the game to the Rams. You totally would have thought that should have been good enough to get to week 18 with a chance against a kind of lousy Patriots team that had incentive to lose. How it wasn't with Kansas City playing the way it did will just always be a source of frustration. 3-2. The point was originally that the early season Ravens game felt like it meant a great deal, and it turned out that it did, because one different result, one of the 3 losses being a win, would have been enough to at least force Kansas City into action for that final game. And you remember what happened. They started Carson Wentz, who's now in Minnesota, by the way. They started Carson Wentz, and they got completely destroyed by the Broncos. Like they treated the game as a joke, which essentially was basically the equivalent of 2 weeks off before the playoffs. And then it was the Texans. They were a cut above the Texans. So such a big edge. Nothing new here. I know, nothing new here, but basically 2 weeks off, not just getting the one, but getting it a week ahead. And then the bye, and then the Texans, and then it's the one game of the AFC Championship. The Bills, that was it. Kansas City went from, this doesn't really treat the Texans very kindly, but pretty much went from week 17, whoever they beat that week, to clinch the one. That would have been the Steelers. Oh, on Christmas, we watched that game. That did it, right? That got them to 15-1, and the Bills then had no shot at them. So from Christmas to January 26th in the AFC Championship, a month and a day, where there was just very little sweating to do for the Chiefs. Just early season Ravens, you get it, and it's Baltimore that can have the anxiety this year about seeding, and they're in a tougher division, so they've got, that to wrestle with. It won't be comfortable if they lose their opener here. Bills lose at home, though, to Baltimore, and that's sort of like a loss and a half almost. It's obviously in the conference to a team that's battling with you. That would be a bigger win for the Ravens to get on the road to start their year. They started last year in Kansas City, lost by an inch on that likely play in the end zone where he was just out of bounds. That would feel great for them to get a road win in Buffalo to start the season. So just like it's a huge game right away. You already knew that. Let's go to John here next. Hi, John.
I couldn't agree with you more on the source of frustration it's been with all that. When you look back at when they changed the rule to only the one seed getting the first round bye, I think it's something crazy like since then, if it's been 6 years, we would have had the first round bye five of those 6 years.
Yeah.
And it's, testament to how good the Chiefs have been.
Right.
And how good we've been. And it's just the slimmest of errors can cost you the first round bye, and how much could have been different if they never changed the rule or whatever.
Yeah, right, because you're not going to get home field in the AFC Championship as the two, of course, but you would get the week off. And I will say, thank you, John, I thought it was perfect the old way. I thought the NFL playoff format was perfect. It's another one of these things that nobody asked for, the seventh playoff team. Nobody asked for that. Did anybody think, you know what, geez, there just aren't enough mediocre teams that make the playoffs. We really need we need two more, one in each conference. We need to do that. It absolutely did enhance the advantage in ways we've described and that you already know that the one seed gets. And I just think with the imbalances in the schedule, it's just tough. I think it's probably better football too if. You think of the Bills maybe more 2 years ago, just that less worn out for that game. It's just a fairer fight. I probably sound like a homer to somebody who is just driving through or anybody else. I'm not saying any of this because of the Bills' fate. It's just what it is. But I always thought it was perfect with the two byes, then 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, or even going back to, prior to that, it was the 3 division winners would get a bye, and then the wild card would be 4 versus 5. And, that was fine. But 6 seemed okay, too. 7, some of these 7 seeds, do they ever win? I think it's happened.
It has happened once.
Was it Green Bay, Dallas?
Green Bay, Dallas.
That was a 7 versus a 2, and Green Bay blew them out.
Yep.
That's funny. The Steelers really are the picture next to they're on the graphic for this point. Those 7-seed Steeler teams that have just gotten rolled by the Bills and the Chiefs. And then last year, the Ravens, who were the 3, I guess. That's a 3-6. And Denver was the 7. Denver got rolled here. They 34-7 or whatever, 31-7. Yeah, I liked it the old way. Who needed it? So many things we get from sports in the form of changes. Nobody wanted it. Nobody. Look at what they've done to the baseball playoffs. I don't even feel like I could tell you right now exactly how they work. But did we need 85 win teams or, on that kind of pace to make September more interesting for their fans? I don't know. I saw somebody write this recently, I think. I don't remember who. But when I was growing up, it was in baseball, 4 divisions, 2 in the American, 2 in the National. The American League divisions had 7 teams each. The National League divisions had 6. And somebody pointed out that in those days, like if you were a middling team, you weren't going to win the division. Some teams winning 100 games and you're winning like 78 or something like that. You have no aspirations of the playoffs. You had to finish first to make the playoffs. You would have been, if you were a fan of whoever, the Brewers or somebody, that was never going to happen. But did we all just lose interest in the sport in these towns? Like, did that just completely die? No, somebody pointed out how it was meaningful to pass teams in the standings. Like you weren't playing for the playoffs, but you were playing for 4th. And that would have been your focus. The teams too, I would imagine. But the fans would have been focused on that. And then baseball eventually decided, like all sports do, that wasn't good enough. We have to get these middling teams into the postseason, or at least give them a realistic shot at it. And if you're not a Brewers fan in that example, bad example, they're great this year, and they're in Toronto this weekend. Bieber for Toronto tonight, I think. So that should be good. But if you're a fan of one of those middle teams, was it that bad? Did you need to get to the playoffs and then probably lose? I mean, that's fun. It just kind of cheapened it all. And I don't know, at the risk of just sounding old, it was definitely better, I would say. The point was really more about the football playoffs and seeding, and I totally think that, and like the caller does. And college is, an eye roll for me too, because we got to the playoff and that was kind of cool, and let's expand it. I always said it. When I was working at ESPN, I was saying this, and that was 20 years ago. Whatever kind of number, you want a college football playoff, fine. Whatever number of teams you go with, immediately you will think it was not enough. And the same griping that colleges do when they're not, invited to the big bowl game, or they're not, in the national championship conversation, even though they were 12-0 in some lesser conference. The same griping will it still exist? It'll just be like a tier down, because 4 teams make the playoffs, but wait to hear from the 5th team is on line 1. And then it was 8 or 16. It's never enough. The basketball tournament, which was perfect, they had to have, 8 more teams or whatever it is. It's just all money, right? They just have to keep adding to it. It's never what we want. Nobody asks for it, but it's the way it goes. Break here, and then we'll talk some more. This is Mike Schopp on WGR. Well, good luck in your drafts if you got any. Listen to me, plural. My favorite, one of at least, my favorite tweets to see or emails to get is a fantasy question, and it's really, not to be like a cliche, but it's really more about process, right? I'm not your world's leader in player takes. On most podcasts I go on, people will ask, like, who's your ride or die, or who's, your favorite sleeper or something like that. And I always have a tough time with that because I really just don't think like that. I want to have a little bit of everybody because the most important thing for me is to appreciate what you don't know or can't know. So I like certain builds more than others, how many running backs and when and everything like that. But, Matt Waldman was talking about drafting Derrick Henry. I almost never draft Derrick Henry, which, that's probably pretty stupid. And I've been that way for 5 years, and somehow I'm still, not completely turned off by the game. Maybe this year will be the change. I mean, probably you're hoping so, right? You want to see Derrick Henry come in here next Sunday night and run wild and lead them somewhere. So good luck in your drafts. Let me know if I can help. Sam Panayotovich with me earlier today talking about the Parsons trade effects and more with week 1 just around the corner. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.